Good evening and welcome to Scotland.7 here on Broadcasting Scotland. My name's Kenny McBride. And I'm joined this evening by two of our favourite guests. Firstly, by Andrew Wilson from the All Under One Banner organisation. Andrew, how are you tonight?
Kenny, I'm doing well, thank you. How are you this evening?
I'm well. And Sam Payton from Save Loch Lomond campaign. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Kenny. How are you?
I'm not bad. So we start this evening, as we always do, with our coronavirus statistics update. And as of 2 p.m. today, a total of 233,535 people in Scotland have been tested through NHS Scotland labs and UK government regional testing centres. Of these, 217,177 were confirmed negative, 18,182 were positive. Today there are 12 new confirmed cases of COVID-19 and there are 4 new reported deaths of people who have tested positive. This is going to be an underestimate of the number of cases, as not everyone with the virus will display symptoms and not all those with symptoms will be tested. And of the people who have tested positive, 512 were in hospital last night, 7 of whom were in intensive care, plus 14 more people in intensive care with suspected COVID-19. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus infection has sadly risen to 2,476. This number only includes those who died in hospital having received a positive test for the virus. The latest UK daily figures available show that 42,927 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, an increase of 171. This number refers to deaths in all settings, not just those in hospitals. And as it's Tuesday, we also have the Office for National Statistics report, which gives a more complete picture of the impact of the pandemic in England. In the week ending 5th of June, which was week 23 of the year, a total of 1,488 deaths were registered where the novel coronavirus was mentioned on the death certificate. This is the lowest weekly total for 9 weeks, even allowing for the late May bank holiday, possibly causing some deaths from week 22 to be recorded in week 23. This compares to the Scottish total of under 100 deaths in the same week. The total number of deaths in care homes was 335, above the 5-year average, while the number of deaths in hospitals was 538, below the 5-year average, even though almost 2/3 of coronavirus-related deaths for the week occurred in hospitals. This may be linked to the reduction in normal hospital activity during lockdown. Overall, excess mortality was 7.3% higher than the 5-year average, compared to 3% excess mortality for the same week in Scotland. And before we go on with the rest of the news, I will just remind you can join the conversation here on Twitter if you follow us at Broadcast Scot and you use the hashtag Scotland@7. That's Scotland, AT, and the number 7. We will be flashing some of those tweets up on the screen. As you can see, there's one from me up there right now. But our first story is about education, and schools will return full-time in August if Scotland continues to make progress on suppressing the coronavirus, the Deputy First Minister John Swinney announced today. The move comes after significant progress was made in reducing incidence rates of the virus, putting Scotland on a more positive trajectory than previously expected. As a result, the Scottish Government has now made it a central planning assumption that pupils will return to class full-time in August. This is conditional on infection rates being sufficiently low to continue to control the virus, public health and testing systems being in place, and protective measures and risk assessments being carried out in schools. A new subgroup of the COVID-19 advisory group will monitor progress and provide further advice to ministers shortly. The Education Recovery Group will also meet over the summer to oversee the next steps. Councils will continue to prepare blended learning models as a contingency, and these will be scrutinised by Her Majesty's Inspectors of Education. Mr Swinney also revealed that an additional £100 million will be invested over the next 2 years to tackle the impact of lockdown on schools and pupils, including ensuring every current probation or teacher who meets the standard for full registration having a teaching post for the year ahead. And Sam, I'll come to you first on this. How happy are you to hear that there's now a good chance that your kids will be going back to school full time in August?
Not to put a dampener on the kind of good news, I'm a bit concerned that the fact that they just seem to have about turned so quickly, because it's been very much about blended learning right up until today, with no word of warning that this was going to happen. And it was only today we get given our timetables for August from the schools. and how blended learning was going to be working. So it is very quick. So I wouldn't like to think that the education and the Scottish Government have basically, backtracking because they've been lobbied by companies and various people. I would like to think they would put the health and safety of the kids first. And saying that, if the virus is suppressed and we're looking good to go, then fair dues. I give it my support. But the one thing we need to be aware of, if the kids go back into full-time education, is the fact that they have been in isolation and in lockdown since March. So there will be many issues with kids if you expect them just to go straight back into school full-time after being at home for such a long time and being isolated. I don't think that'll work, just as easy as what they are thinking. Some kids will bounce back, and then maybe later on that you might notice some issues and problems and things arising. Some kids will be immediately where, just going back into that full-time education setting after being off for so long is going to be really difficult for them to cope with. So I think they need to really think this out. It's not normal in normal circumstances where there's no pandemic, but if there's been a child that has been dealing with various issues, from trauma to health issues or whatever, normally what schools do is a kind of I can't remember the word now off the top of my head. My wee boy done it last year, where they'll go back maybe part-time and they'll go back and to build them back up again. I can't even think of the phrasing for it now. My brains went blank in that one. But they need to do something along the same lines. A phased return. That's what it is. I knew I would get it eventually. They need to be thinking, with the kids being off since March, they really, really need to do a phased return. They cannot go straight back, jump the gun and think kids can just go back in August full time.
And Andrew, I believe you have teachers in the family. What's been their reaction to this news?
Yes, Kenny, I do. And so it's something that's been getting close attention and discussion in this household for quite a long time. I think the reaction is broadly positive and also understanding. I'm not sure that we're seeing a U-turn. I'm pretty confident we're not seeing a U-turn. I think there's some messaging here, perhaps from the Scottish Government, which is meant to be consistent with the broader messaging that we're sending, which is if we continue to suppress the virus, and do as we are asked now, things will get better faster. And I think the message from the Education Secretary this afternoon is consistent with that. I think what's being said is that if we continue with the progress that we've had and the success that we've had several days with no deaths in Scotland, for example, no deaths reported in connection with coronavirus, then in those circumstances, the quid pro quo, the upside for all of the downside just now is that the schools will be able to return in a better shape and a happier shape. So I think there's definitely a recognition here that all of this planning is required and none of it will be wasted. The planning to return on a blended basis is necessary because if we see, for example, and this is speculation, but if as the winter draws in, we find that the rates of infection with coronavirus are rising again, then it may be necessary to impose greater restrictions on movement and greater restrictions on schools. So that planning has been done thanks to the Herculean work by teachers the length and breadth of the country. That work has been done, so there is now a plan that's there that can be implemented. And teachers, of course, will be delighted if it is safe and it's appropriate for children to return to what looks like more of a normal school and a normal school environment. And I know that teachers are anxious, have been working very hard throughout the crisis to support children who found lockdown very difficult. And I know that teachers will continue to support children who then find the reverse, the unlocking, to be difficult and disturbing. And I personally feel that the process of unlocking in all sorts of ways is going to be more difficult than the lockdown, which was fairly binary, fairly black and white, and fairly simple to understand. So here, the Education Secretary's announcement this afternoon has been recognised as a welcome development and an evolution. And from the teachers I've spoken to this afternoon, the response is positive.
Mm-hmm. And do they feel like they've had the kind of support that they need from their heads and the education departments?
Broadly, broadly, yes, I think so. Different education departments and different schools have handled this differently, as you would expect. Some have been better than others, but from the teachers that I've been speaking to, I know that they have been They know that they have been listened to by their heads and by their boards and by their education departments, and they know and they recognise the hard work, the teamwork, and the hard work that everybody has had to put in together to get to continue teaching during the crisis. To develop the blended learning models for August, and now to potentially evolve those in order to reflect the circumstances which we hope will prevail when we get to the middle of August.
Mm-hmm. Well, we move on now to the other side of the Atlantic, where a powerful earthquake hit the coast of southern Mexico earlier today, shaking buildings in Mexico City, hundreds of miles away, sending people fleeing their homes into the streets and triggering a tsunami warning. There were no immediate reports of casualties from the quake, which the US Geological Survey measured at magnitude 7.4. It was centred on the Pacific coast in the state of Oaxaca. President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador said there were no preliminary reports of damage, but added that he was still awaiting reports from Oaxaca, a mountainous state that's home to coffee plantations, beach resorts, and Spanish colonial architecture. Witnesses in Mexico City saw no initial signs of injuries or damage. The capital's public security ministry said a flyover showed there are no fallen buildings. The quake set off a tsunami warning for a radius of 1,000 kilometres on the Pacific coast of Mexico and Central America, including Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. And Sam, I mean, these kind of natural disasters are always worrying. What do you think about this story here?
Crikey, I've not been on social media all day today, so it was a bit of a shock when I was hearing you read out the story. Crikey, on top of COVID, and then they've got an earthquake. I'll need to kind of go and have a nosy. It's just absolutely shocking. It's a shame, and I hope it hasn't triggered a tsunami, because that's worst case scenario. That's just around us.
Yeah, this only happened a couple of hours ago, so Clearly we don't have a lot of news yet. Hopefully, maybe by tomorrow we'll have a bit more information. But yeah, as you say, on top of the coronavirus, it's a real worry for them. Mm-hmm. Back in Scotland, though, staff who work in specialist cancer services or provide long-term care for the elderly, as well as staff working in residential mental health, will be offered weekly coronavirus testing from the 8th of July. This builds on the routine testing currently offered to care home staff and aims to protect NHS staff and patients by reducing the spread of the virus in hospitals and other healthcare settings. In addition, from June 29th, all staff in hospitals and care homes who interact with patients or residents will be required to wear a medical face mask throughout their shift. Anyone entering care homes and hospitals will also be asked to wear a face covering throughout. Face coverings will also be required when attending a hospital appointment. Healthcare Improvement Scotland will also restart its inspection programme of hospitals and services by the end of June. Andrew, this has got to be good news that more people are getting these the kind of protective equipment just to be an extra wee bit of protection as we start to reopen more of the NHS, isn't it?
Absolutely, Kenny. As it happens, I've not been in a care home, but my father's in a care home in Edinburgh, and so I've been very closely paying attention to the developments there, both in respect of my father, but also in respect of the staff who I know well, and I would see more than weekly in normal circumstances. And I was aware that in their case, in their example, they had been able to access proper protective care and were also working exceedingly hard in very difficult circumstances. As it happens, I've also been in one of the hospitals in Edinburgh with my other parent, who was admitted for a couple of days, and I was struck by the changes that had been wrought in the assessment and admissions part of that hospital that I know well because I've got aged parents, and the level of care, level of equipment that was being provided to the staff, the way in which the staff had changed how they were working. In the case of that particular hospital, the entire process and location of the way in which they admitted surgical patients had been moved to a different building. And it struck me that the staff, again, were being listened to and were working extremely hard in extremely difficult circumstances, but were content with the approach that's been taken. Now, these developments, I think, are a reflection that we're not sitting back and letting things continue as they are, that we know that this supply chain for PPE in Scotland has been made more resilient and has been localised. We know that people's understanding of what PPE works both in medical terms but also in human terms and physical terms, that inevitably is evolving. And we've got people wearing masks for long shifts, working very hard. So it strikes me that from this story that, again, there is attention being paid to the detail. And I think the point about testing is very important. I think that it's widely regarded as being important that as quickly as possible we move to get to a place where testing of, at this point, the priority frontline workers who are working in the most dangerous circumstances in hospitals and care homes, that they are tested and tested and tested and tested. And I would like to see that the attention and the ability to do that to begin to spread to the wider population as we test and trace, as test and protect in Scotland, but also for the well-being and the state of mind of the general population. We don't have a cheap pocket test available yet, but I would like to see us get to that place, get to that position quickly as a priority, in order that the confidence that grows from regular testing can be spread to those who are on the front line, and those who are at greatest risk, and then to the wider population at large.
Mm-hmm. And Sam, we've seen obviously the amount of testing ramp up quite significantly. We're now at a point where for every positive test that there is, there are about 200 tests altogether carried out. Now, Dr. Craig Dalziel from the Commonweal calculated a couple of months ago that the really successful countries were doing about 100 tests for every positive case. The places like New Zealand, that was the kind of level of testing they were doing. So it seems like we are definitely on the right track to really suppressing the virus now.
Yeah, it does, which is really good, and which is what we're aiming for, which is what we're wanting. And yeah, it's common sense now to start getting healthcare workers and NHS staff and and frontline people, people dealing with cancer patients and that, to be starting to kind of get weekly tests, and that is again will help to suppress the virus even more, which then leads us on to being able to come out of lockdown. I think today one of the things I did see today, I did manage to catch on the news today, was they were saying that we've been one of our country as a UK as a whole has been the longest in lockdown, because other countries have not been in lockdown as long as we have, but that's probably because in the beginning we were kind of fumbling along, so to speak, but now, especially in Scotland, we're kind of coming along leaps and bounds and going in the right track, so hopefully it may last.
Yeah, well, on another testing story, health boards have been advised by the Chief Medical Officer to focus on using coronavirus antibody tests only to improve understanding of the virus and in the clinical management of patients. The CMO, Dr. Gregor Smith, has written to all NHS boards outlining that as there is currently insufficient clinical evidence showing the degree of protection antibodies give, or the duration of any protection, the only clinically safe option is to assume no meaningful immunity from a positive result until evidence shows otherwise. On this basis, advice to health boards is not to offer on-demand antibody testing. So Andrew, these antibody tests, I mean, they're available to buy in Superdrug now, but the CMO there saying they shouldn't be used for anything other than to kind of keep an eye on things just yet.
Yes, Kenny, the testing regime that I was thinking about myself wasn't necessarily certainly a wide-ranging deployment of the current antibody test, which, as you say, isn't particularly helpful apart from in some limited circumstances, and in the context of a public health crisis, a pandemic, the antibody testing doesn't tell you that the safer thing to do is to isolate people and to take more active steps than simply testing them. However, I would like to think that with the amount of attention and the priority that has been given to so many aspects of our national and international response to this virus and this crisis, that we begin to develop additional testing or alternative testing, which is more useful both from the perspective of the public and potentially from the perspective of public health as well.
Mm-hmm. And Sam, again on this one, this is health boards being told not to use antibody testing. Do you have any concerns that maybe that health boards may get the wrong message from this, or that they may kind of stop paying attention to antibodies altogether?
No, I don't think they will. I mean, to use the antibody tests as a way of research and just keeping an eye on things, I think that will carry on. But in terms of relying on it, in terms of, with people, are they going to be immune and things like that, I think it's a bit dangerous anyway. I think we've all got to be have a bit of caution at the moment, because there's so much. It is a new virus. There's so much we don't know yet, and we're learning every day. Every day, we're always getting new snippets of information coming out. So I think it's still early days yet, and until there's proper antibody testing, which will give us the actual information that's required for the scientists to say how long is that immunity going to last for, or and how effective, because somebody might have some sort of immunity, but that's not to say they wouldn't catch it again. They just might catch it at a lesser degree of severity. So there's so much we need to know, but I think the health boards will carry on doing antibody testing and things, even just for research purposes.
Well, we will obviously keep an eye on that, but back to regular politics, and the SNP has urged Labour to stop dodging its responsibilities and join opposition parties in calling for an urgent U-turn to extend the Brexit transition period. As the Tory government's Brexit talks continue to stall, Dr. Philippa Whitford said the likelihood of a devastating bad deal or no deal Brexit was increasing by the day, and Labour would not be forgiven if it chooses to sit back and watch while people's jobs and livelihoods are on the line. The SNP's Brexit spokesperson said Keir Starmer was failing to show leadership on the issue by pursuing a continuity Corbyn, fence-sitting approach to the Brexit talks, and was ignoring the views of his party members in Scotland, Wales and the shadow cabinet. And Andrew, I mean, calling Keir Starmer the continuity Corbyn is hardly the best start he'll have been looking for.
Absolutely, Kenny. The alliteration in there, I'm sure, was just too great to resist in terms of a catchphrase or a strapline. Notwithstanding the play on words, I think the point that Dr. Whitford makes is right. And it reflects also the approach of the Labour Party in the UK to Scottish politics generally. There has been an absence of intellectual thought. There's been an absence of engagement. There's been an absence of realism, and as a result, the result of that is the powerless state that we see now of the Labour Party in Scotland. So, on the one hand, I'm not surprised that Starmer has been attracted to remain. To continue to plough the furrow that was established by his predecessor. I think as a policy, I think it had been fairly hard won and hard fought and hard worked out within the Labour Party, and so for them to switch would be surprising, even with a new leader. But what it also shows is that they have no answer to this. None whatsoever. All we're getting is a continuing wait and see. And if there's anything that we know about the determination of the Brexiteers in the Conservative Party and elsewhere, it is that they are in complete control from their perspective, they are now in complete control of the timescale. They know that by the end of this month it will be impossible to do anything, and they know that all they have to do is tick the clock down for the next 6 months to the end of the year, and they win their no-deal Brexit prize that they have been working towards. So to sit on your hands and watch the clock tick down, or the pages of the calendar flick by, is definitely an abrogation of responsibility as a leader of the opposition. It's an abrogation of responsibility as a citizen, for heaven's sake.
Mm-hmm. And Sam, I mean, we've got data from Focal Data, did a survey, found that 83% of people in Scotland and 77% of people across the UK do want an extension, whether that's because of the COVID crisis or because of just general concerns about Brexit. People do want this. Why is it that this Tory government is so determined to push through something that is now more and more people are finding that they really don't want?
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but yeah, we have this conversation every week, don't we?
Yeah, well,
they're just not interested, and the thing is, they're not interested in what the general public wants. They have their own agenda and they're pushing through. All they had to do was convince the people enough to vote for it and vote for them in the general election, which they did do. And now, regardless of the consequences, they are now pushing through. With Labour, I think it just shows a lack of commitment, which I don't have a lot of respect for people that are not able to commit. They're not able to kind of make a choice. It's sitting on the fence. To me, it shows a lack of leadership. They need to. It's as if they're trying to back both horses and waiting to the final line to see which the photo finish to see which one they back, and that's just not on. That's not fair. It's not fair on their constituents that voted for them. It's wrong. But yeah, I think on the government, it doesn't surprise me. It really does not surprise me. They are not willing to listen to 83% of Scots and 77% of the UK population. They've got their own agenda, and they're not interested in what we say.
Well, also in Westminster, the SNP has ramped up calls on the UK government to urgently intervene to protect travel customers who are still out of pocket due to airlines and holiday companies delaying refunds. In a cross-party letter organised by the consumer group Which, signed by SNP MPs to the UK government's Minister for Aviation, MPs renewed concerns that many of the UK's biggest airlines and travel operators are openly breaking the law by refusing refunds or failing to offer one within the required period. The letter highlighted that a number of travel companies are forcing customers to accept refund credit notes and vouchers in lieu of cash refunds, raising warnings over the lack of clarity over the level of protection linked to them as travel restrictions remain in place and uncertainty surrounds future travel plans. Andrew, did you have a holiday booked that you've had to postpone or cancel this year?
Unfortunately not, Kenny. There were other plans set for this summer that didn't involve international travel. I travel with work quite a lot, so it's affected me in other ways. You were mentioning that this letter is directed to the Minister for who's responsible for aviation. I just went and looked it up, and it's slightly worrying that somebody called Kelly Tolhurst MP is also responsible for maritime affairs and security and civil contingencies. It says on the UK government website. Okay. So the travel industry we had seen a number of collapses of very large travel businesses immediately before coronavirus hit. So we could see that the travel industry in some sections was in grave difficulties. Others, not so much. We know that BA has been very profitable lately as they continue to extract money from their staff. We knew that some sections of the holiday industry were in grave difficulty already, and then they are being completely prevented from operating for some considerable time. It inevitably has put them in a very, very difficult position. That having been said, there are insurance and other regulated structures in place to make sure that people get their money, and these businesses are often often receive attention from Which and others for the practices that they indulge in, and it sounds like the accountants have said just slow down with paying back people's money, and it's unacceptable in these circumstances. For the businesses to cynically or for commercial reasons to fail to meet their obligations to people is unacceptable, and that is why the travel industry, the package holiday business industry in particular, is so heavily regulated, because it has to be. Without the heavy regulation, they would behave in a way that's completely unconscionable. So it's not a surprise that they're so heavily regulated. There's a regulator for a reason. So sounds like we're getting to a place now where the regulator really needs to be stepping in and forcing the businesses that are not doing what they're supposed to do to get the finger out and get people reimbursed.
Yeah, I mean, Sam, this is a kind of a difficult situation, because obviously the airlines are really struggling. This has been a real body blow to them financially, but at the same time, they're not doing the right thing by their or several of the airlines are not doing the right thing by their workers, and they don't appear to be doing the right thing by their passengers. It makes it very hard to justify the government stepping in to help them out, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it also makes it very difficult for people to feel sorry for the companies, when they are treating their staff the way they're getting treated, and they're treating their customers as such. And yes, it is difficult, and understand it's difficult, and and I get all that. However, but a lot of people that have booked holidays have, it's people that have saved up all year long, and they don't have a lot of money. I mean, I know a lot of people who have been forced to take vouchers. It was a case of take a credit note voucher or or basically lose everything. And it was that blatant that they were told this. And yes, there's the industry is regulated, but again, like everything else at the moment, with COVID-19, everything's kind of slowed down, and maybe people are struggling with staff and things like that. The industry will not be getting as regulated, I would imagine, as much as it should be. If staff are shielding or, and so forth, working from home. So it's like the industry's taking advantage of that customers are not finding it as easy to contact the regulators, and even trading standards and people like that at the moment. So, but as I say, I do know people that they believed that they had no choice to accept a voucher or credit note rather than getting a full refund, and apart from that, they don't know what's going to happen, because they don't. I mean, they've now got this credit note voucher, but they don't know if the company's going to be still viable in a year's time or 6 months down the line. Or, so even still, they could still lose their money, and that's the problem. So it is. I mean, I know it's difficult, but at the end of the day, it's difficult to feel sorry for the companies when they are treating customers as such and treating staff just as equally as bad.
Yeah, and we should remind our viewers, if you have had a holiday or a flight booked that you've paid for that's then been cancelled or delayed because of the crisis, you are generally entitled to a cash refund. So if they tell you that you have to take a voucher, be aware that that's not necessarily the truth. But anyway, moving on. Scottish Greens housing spokesperson Andy Whiteman has urged protection for residents after holiday short-term lets have been advised they could reopen next month, pointing out that many of these properties are flats which share accommodation with permanent residents. Ahead of the tourism sector restarting, Andy Whiteman wrote to Tourism Secretary Fergus Ewing, urging the Scottish Government to consider what specific advice should apply to short-term lets in shared stairwells. Short-term lets in cities are often in tenement buildings where guests share entrances with permanent residents. In Edinburgh, some properties have returned to rented accommodation. Evidence shows that SARS-CoV-2, the new coronavirus, remains infectious on surfaces such as banisters, doorknobs and doors for some time. Hallways, of course, are rarely configured for safe social distancing. The Association of Scotland's Self-Caterers has released new cleaning protocol for self-catering properties in the context of COVID-19. However, it is not clear what evidential basis underpins the new protocol. And Andrew, this is, the short-term lets, particularly in Edinburgh, have been a real kind of bugbear of Andy Whiteman's for some time, and this is just another complication that isn't perhaps being thought of enough. That people coming in and out, coming from all over the place, will be coming into what are actually residential areas.
Absolutely, Kenny, and I've got to say personally that Andy Whiteman's campaigning on the campaigning by Andy Whiteman and others in this area is to be encouraged and is to be supported, and the more we get of it, the better. As you say, in sections of the city centre of the Old Town, in particular in Edinburgh, the short-term holiday let sector, I'll try not to use the company's name, is a blight. We have entire tenements where there is now nobody permanently resident. We have tenement stairs where, and that is evidenced by the clustering of like fungus on the door frames at the fronts of the close mouth of key boxes, one or two for each flat. And even we have many other tenement stairs where there is perhaps one resident clinging on to where they've lived for a long time, and they are surrounded by party flats, which make their lives all year round in this city pretty miserable. We see the lack of a concerted approach in Scotland and in our cities, but it's a problem elsewhere. But in our cities in particular, is a real challenge. The short-term let sector does nothing but damage. It doesn't invest in the local economy. It doesn't support local people. It doesn't look after the properties. It doesn't respect other citizens. It doesn't respect the local councils. And it is something which I think we really need to approach very strongly. And so the circumstances relating to whether or not it is safe to reopen these places is just another symptom of the problems which this sector causes, and which this sector has single-handedly refused to engage on or to do anything positive in response to the many and detailed and important objections that residents and councils and others have, and Andy Whiteman and other politicians have had to the sector as a whole for some considerable time now.
Mm-hmm. And Sam, as Andrew was saying, there may be one or two people that have stayed in these tenements, but then very often those will be people that have been there a long time, and they are perhaps in risk categories. There may be older people in these closes where they're then going to be surrounded by tourists. It is a real concern, isn't it?
It is a real concern. And yeah, they've got to kind of go in and kind of make sure that things are going to be safe for people. But this sector, as Andrew says, it causes so many problems right across the board, not even just with corona, but with lots of other factors as well. Even trying to find in the housing sector, trying to find a long-term let, for somebody looking for a flat or something is very difficult. Really, really difficult. This sector needs to be, again, I'm trying not to say kind of names and things because I don't, it's just they need to be more heavily regulated, but I know from a personal experience, having a young adult who's now trying to flee the nest and kind of get his own place, and trying to find somewhere is absolutely nearly impossible. And it's got nothing to do with COVID, because we started looking even before all this happened. It's more to do with the fact there's so many places now getting used as short-term lets, because he's looking for in the city and in Glasgow, and trying to find something that's long-term is so difficult, really, really difficult. Practically nearly impossible. So yeah, I hope that Fergus Ewing actually kind of looks into this and actually kind of gives a lot more guidelines. I don't know how you would word it. They need to do something, because as you said, there's a very strong risk that the people that are still residing in these properties are fairly elderly and been there all their life, and they will be at high risk categories.
Yeah.
Kenny, Sam's point is a good one. When I was helping with campaigning during the general election in December, I wasn't anywhere near the old town or the city centre in Edinburgh. I was away out in the suburbs. But it was, as we were going door to door, it was very clear that there were short-term let properties well away from the city centre, in very suburban areas, places where you wouldn't expect necessarily to find visitors staying. And these were spread regularly through parts of the area where I was working, and it came as a real surprise to think that there would be people who were interested in visiting the city and staying in those suburbs. It's fine, it's not a problem. But the point the result of that is the point that Sam makes. These short-term lets reduce the available housing stock for the rest of the rental sector, and as a result, we've got a housing shortage as it is. And it's simply making matters worse in the part of the sector that's meant to be part of the buffer for those who are then moving on to other forms of home ownership or home occupation. So it's not limited at all to just the picturesque streets and the cobbled streets in the Edinburgh city centre. It's right across our cities now.
Mm. Well, back at Westminster, all 30 recommendations of the review into the Windrush scandal will be implemented by the government, the Home Secretary has confirmed. Priti Patel, who has previously made a public apology for failings by the Home Office, said she would be speaking this week to Wendy Williams, the author of the Lessons Learned review, and realising its recommendations in full. In a statement in the Commons today, Patel said, "I was clear when Wendy Williams published her Lessons Learned review that I would listen and I would act. I have heard what she has said and I will be accepting the recommendations she has made in full. I am committed to ensuring that the Home Office delivers for each part of the community it serves, and I will come back to update the House on how we will be implementing the recommendations before the summer recess." Sam, this report was delivered in March, and only now in June are we getting the Home Secretary saying, yes, we're going to stop deporting British citizens to Jamaica. It's good news, but it's later than you might have hoped, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. We could have expected that a kind of while ago, not now. But however, yeah, that's good news. And for Priti Patel to actually apologise is a bit of a, didn't expect that one, never seen that one coming, but hey-ho. Yeah. We'll see what happens from here onwards, and hopefully they keep their word.
Yeah, and Andrew, the review specifically criticised the hostile environment, which has been long-standing Home Office policy now. Do you think that this promise to fulfil these 30 recommendations will include dismantling the hostile environment apparatus?
Not a chance. I listened very carefully as you were reading out what the Home Secretary had said in the House, and she did not undertake to implement the recommendations from the Williams report. She said that she would come back to the House and tell them what she thought about implementing them. And this government, as a successor government to Theresa May's government and Theresa May's Home Office when she was Home Secretary, when the hostile environment was developed and implemented with glee, cannot be trusted with regard to these matters at all. We know that Patel pays lip service to all manner of things which she doesn't actually believe. We know, as a committed believer in the death penalty, that she's probably the worst person to have as Home Secretary in a very long time. I wouldn't trust her to implement a bus ticket. I wouldn't trust her to implement anything. And we know that the cynical and frankly racist policies that underpinned the hostile environment and the environment that led to all of the imprecations and damage that was done to these people continues. I think that the announcement came yesterday is simply cynical political timing. I think it's Windrush Day either yesterday or certainly this week. Yeah. So there's an attempt to get some, can you imagine, an attempt to get some positive spin on this story where there is no positive spin to be had. And I think we will be, when she comes back to tell the House what she's thinking of implementing, we will discover pretty quickly that she's going to implement nothing. This is coming from a government which has singularly failed to do anything following Grenfell, and it's exactly the same policy with regard to the Windrush generation and the victims of the hostile environment and government policy.
Mm-hmm. And finally today, a story that I'm sure Andrew will have quite a bit to say about. Broadcasting Scotland was in Edinburgh this morning, where the All Under One Banner organisation announced its plans to keep campaigning for Scotland's independence, even as marches and other mass gatherings are still not permitted under lockdown regulations. And we have a wee clip to show you now.
What do we want? Independence! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Independence! When do we want it? Now!
Why did you feel that All Under One Banner needed to make a statement now when we're only just beginning to come out of lockdown?
Well, it's very important that we make the statement for what's to come, because usually we give maybe about a year notice for mass demonstrations. So what we've got planned is going to take an awful lot of planning, organisation. So to do that, we need to announce it, and that's why we're here today. So what we've got planned, what we're going to announce today is one demonstration a month organised by All Under One Banner. It's going to be a static demonstration. It's going to be socially distanced, following the guidelines. So as restrictions ease, we're going to scale up the campaign. The first three, we're going to do one a month until phase 4 begins. We're in phase 2, as you just said. Phase 2 just now. As soon as phase 4 starts, we will call a march and a rally, either at Glasgow or at Edinburgh, within a few weeks of then. But at the moment, the first three of these demonstrations, the first one's going to be back here on the 20th of July, and we're looking for 129 official participants to take part, 129 MSPs in the Parliament. So the emphasis, the symbolism is that it's Scotland's right to decide the future of Scotland, and mandates have been given, and we want that decision, and we will have it. So that'll be that demonstration on the 20th of July. On the 19th of August, we're going to be at Bannockburn Field. Numbers wise, that detail will be forthcoming. And then also on the 17th of September, we're going to do a demonstration at George Square. So safety is of our utmost importance. As things ease off, so will we escalate the campaign. We have to do this. We can't just do nothing. What can be done must be done, and we're going to do it.
And when you're making your protest or your event here at the Parliament, what are you hoping that the politicians hear from you?
Well, they hear that the independence movement is not only not gone away, but it's actually grown. And they might not see it in their numbers, because obviously they're very small numbers of participants. But the actual spirit and the zest of the demonstrations itself should echo around their halls. They won't be able to ignore it, and they'll know that Holyrood 2021 has to be a game changer, and certainly we're going to push for that.
A number of us got together 2 years ago and set up the Scottish Independence Foundation, or as it's sometimes known, SIF. The purpose of this is to supply money to groups, anybody who is interested in independence around Scotland. So we've given money to local groups in the Highlands, the Lowlands, down in Galloway, throughout the country, and this has allowed them to equip themselves for street stalls, gazebos and the like. We've also supported the broadcasting groups, such as Broadcasting Scotland itself, also Independence Live, and we've also enabled the likes of Leslie Riddick to produce films about the Faroes and indeed soon Estonia. In other words, we give money to folk who will progress Scottish independence. And more recently, we gave a little bit of support to All Under One Banner to hold the last Edinburgh March last October, and we're hoping to forge a relationship with All Under One Banner and support them in the new initiatives. I think All Under One Banner kept the whole flame of independence alive, I think, through 2018 and 2019. And we actually are going to support them to actually light the flame again after this COVID pandemic.
And how big an effect do you think the pandemic is having on the independence movement, given that there can't be a lot of activism during this time?
Well, if you look at the opinion polls, with 54% of the population saying they're in favour of independence, clearly the people are still thinking about independence for Scotland, but certainly all our campaigning has had to be online. It's on the internet, broadcasters such as Broadcasting Scotland and so on. But I think what we've got to do is to translate the 54% who say they're in favour of independence now into actually campaigning, going out, increasing the numbers, and of course when the referendum, or if it's not a referendum, when the election comes, especially next year, that they vote for independence or for independence supporting parties.
The National Yes Registry is a response to the fact that in the last referendum campaign we had hundreds and hundreds of groups across the country that couldn't contact each other. They didn't know how even the group in the next town. So what the National Yes Registry is effectively a way to search and find your local group.
And what brings you to this event here today?
Well, first of all, we were invited, it's always nice to be invited, and all under one banner have been doing the big marches across Scotland and keeping the movement visible. But now with the COVID-19 situation, things have to be done differently. So I'm all for keeping campaigning, and our own response to that, we've developed a thing called the Indie app, which is there to help network the groups, to help the groups themselves locally to organise themselves, but also to communicate with each other, communicate ideas across the country. But what's happened now is that with the lockdown and people isolating, we've had to further develop the application and the software and incorporate a video conferencing aspect to it, which funnily enough was from yourselves at Broadcasting Scotland introduced us to the big blue button, and we've now put that video conferencing system into the app, and that's getting developed to be released quite soon.
There is no status quo. It's Scotland's time to go. There is no status quo. Time to go.
That was King Robert the Bruce there right at the end, in case you didn't recognise him, with his mask round his chin. Andrew, how do you feel today went?
Today's been very positive, Kenny. We decided to host an event in an appropriate manner at Holyrood today, not by accident. Today's the anniversary of the first day of the Battle of Bannockburn. And all under one banner over the years has shown that we and the movement, but we are about persistence and perseverance. We are all about, as you heard from some of the interviews there, we are all about making sure that the demands for independence are continue to be held. And whereas in 2014 some people thought that perhaps they had buried the independence movement, and at the beginning of this year, as the coronavirus began to strike, some people were in the press suggesting that it would sound the end of independence as well. Well, they couldn't have been more wrong. So we felt that today's event was a constructive start. We are taking things very, very carefully. When the coronavirus pandemic struck, we were very quick. We were very quick to listen very carefully to what the First Minister and the Scottish Government was saying, and we immediately, in fact, before the lockdown started, we had announced the postponement of the first of the marches in Arbroath in April. So that was done because it was important for us to be mindful and to be acting in a manner that was protecting marchers and their families, the people in the towns and villages where the marches take place, the emergency services and others who are in attendance, everybody in Scotland. So we've always had that at the forefront of our minds, and now that we can see a progression or a pathway out of the current lockdown, it's important that as an organisation which is about persisting and persevering, that we begin to talk to people about what it is that we would like to do. So we think today has gone well.
Excellent. And when you've been planning these kind of socially distanced events Have you had much discussion yet with the police, and how have they responded to it?
So, and in case folks have misunderstood, what All Under One Banner announced this morning is that we are not returning to marches and processions and rallies until it is the proper time to do so. We are not announcing the huge, loud, robust, joyous parties in the street that we are famous for organising. That is not what we are announcing at this moment in time. Instead, to make sure that people remember that we are persisting and persevering and that we're still here, we will organise regular monthly demonstrations, not marches, and we will do that for the next few months until we hope we are able to get the indie movement together on the streets of one of our towns and cities to continue the succession of 22 huge marches and events that we've held in the past. So we work very closely with Police Scotland. We have worked very hard to develop a positive, constructive relationship with them. We've not been in constant communication with them for the last couple of months because we've not been organising marches. But they are aware of what we were going to announce today, and they were aware that we were present at Holyrood with a small group of socially distanced people today. So we continue to work very closely with them. We will work very closely with whichever local authority we notify when it comes to the time for a march to take place. But in the meantime, what people will see will look and will be very different. We are looking at limited numbers of people. We are looking at static demonstrations, not marches, and so the regulatory process for that is very different. And we are looking at doing those things in a way that puts the safety of everybody as the priority, but also that reminds people that whilst circumstances change and whilst the world continues to turn, the independence movement is not going away, and we are not going to stop campaigning for independence for Scotland.
Mm-hmm. And Neil Mackay there said that you're looking for 129 people to apply to be a part of the demonstration at Holyrood. How do people go about applying if they think they might be interested in doing that?
That's a good point, Kenny. It won't have passed your viewers by that there are 129 MSPs who sit in Holyrood, and so we thought it would be appropriate to bring 129 demonstrators, one for each of the MSPs. The process, and that also reflects that we will manage and organise these demonstrations in a very careful and thoughtful way that puts health and safety as a priority. And so what we're going to do is we're asking people to come to the All Under One Banner website, which is auob.org, or to our Facebook pages, which you can find on Facebook by searching All Under One Banner. And there you will find links to add a registration if you would like to participate in any of the demonstrations that we are proposing to hold. That means that we can communicate very clearly and very directly with people who may wish to attend those demonstrations in order that we can set out for them what is expected and what is to happen. And it also means that we can show that we are not in the business of breaking any guidelines or regulations in terms of mass gatherings.
Excellent. And so, Sam, are you going to be putting your name down to be at one of these events?
Yes, I think I'll be putting me and the wee fella down because we're pretty much kind of missing the marches. So yeah, but no, it's common sense, and it does certainly make sense, and it's, you know, at the end of the day, we've not gone away. We've still got a kind of fight in our hands for independence, and we do need to keep going. And this is quite a clever way of doing such. Getting people to apply and register, and it's like, keeping for social distancing and things like that, and keeping crowd control as well. It's a great idea. But yeah, I think I'll go on and register. What about you, Kenny? Are you going on to register?
Well, I won't need to, because as ever, I'm quite certain that Broadcasting Scotland will be covering the all Under One Banner events. We have, I think, covered all of the marches so far.
Well, I'll tell you what, Kenny. I could actually jump on that bandwagon as well, and maybe be your assistant.
We'll have to. we'll have to discuss that with our producer, but we'll have to do it another time because we are out of time for this evening. Thank you very much to Andrew Wilson and Sam Payton for joining us tonight, and thank you at home for joining us as well. It's always a pleasure to have an audience for these shows, and I saw a lot of people on social media this afternoon. I had a tweet this afternoon that got a lot of attention, and a number of people said that they would be tuning in tonight for the first time. So welcome and thank you for being here. This is the bit though where I have to ask you for money. So if you are able to financially support Broadcasting Scotland, then please do us a favour. Go to broadcastingscotland.scot/register. Sign up there as a supporter, and your £5 a month helps us first of all keep the lights on here, and then secondly to develop more new shows for you. We had some discussions at the event today about some ideas that we've got up our sleeves. We have been developing one or two other things. And again, some of that will have to wait until lockdown eases further. But we have a lot of plans, but we can't do any of it without your support. So if you can please do support us. If you can't support us financially, don't worry about that. You can still do a great job for us by following us on Twitter at Broadcast Scot, finding us on Facebook, just search for Broadcasting Scotland. It should be the first thing that pops up. And from there, share the shows around, let people know where Broadcasting Scotland is, what Broadcasting Scotland is, and what we do here. We are trying to build a broadcaster for Scotland, in Scotland, and by Scotland. The tweet that I got a lot of attention for was regarding BBC Scotland, Radio Scotland today, cutting away from the First Minister's broadcast at lunchtime to go to Boris Johnson announcing changes to lockdown in England in the House of Commons, and then commenting on it without pointing out that he only referred to England. The host of that show said, "You can now go and get a haircut." Well, I doubt anybody in Scotland can. And that's what happens when you have a broadcaster that is not 100% focused on your own country. So we do need your support. We do want to let people know that this is what Broadcasting Scotland is. We want to be the national broadcaster that Scotland deserves. We have a long way to go. We're not at BBC standards yet in terms of our equipment or our resources, but we are working hard, and we have honesty, I think, on our side. And finally, if you want to get involved in helping us build this channel, then please do get in touch. There's lots of work to be done here, both behind the camera and in front of the camera. So do please get in touch if you have any skills in journalism, camera operating, sound mixing, or if you'd like to have a go at presenting. If you've got anything you would like to learn about TV production, then get in touch with us. There are lots of opportunities here. Again, some of them may have to wait until some of the lockdown restrictions lift a wee bit, but there are going to be lots of opportunities here for you to contribute to building that broadcaster that Scotland deserves. So do please get in touch with us if you have any interest in getting involved in building a better broadcaster for Scotland. So that is all we've got time for tonight. I'll be back again tomorrow at 7 with another Scotland at 7. But until then, thanks again to Andrew Wilson and to Sam Payton. Thanks again to you for watching, and have a great evening. Good night.